Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast. This Week in America. Shocking, entertaining, and mesmerizing, Radioactive Era of Change from author Isaiah Lopez is a must-read sci-fi and fantasy thriller. 13 years ago, mysterious bolide collided with Earth. Like a nuke, a massive explosion swallows Arlington and the surrounding area, changing the world as we know it. The land is left quarantined from America. People within the blast zone have amassed incredible powers. One such man awakens with his new power and a missing arm. As he copes with this changed world, he bonds with his new allies and reunites with old friends as a grim plot threatens to engulf his new way of life. Born in a military family and raised across the U.S., Isaiah Lopez has found himself a jack of all trades in an attempt at searching for a lifelong dream to build worlds, craft fantastical environments, and page-turning plots. He's found his calling in the workings of Radioactive Era of Change, and he hopes to bring more representation in the world of literature with more fun and compelling stories to come. And the author of Radioactive Era of Change, Isaiah Lopez, is our guest on This Week in America. Isaiah, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is such a fantastic job you've done with this book, Radioactive Era of Change. We'll get into the plot line here in a second. Talk a little bit about your background. Tell us about yourself, your background, and how you came up with this vivid imagination and storytelling ability.
My own background, military brat, traveled everywhere across the United States so far. As for the book itself, it was just kind of like a lucid dream that I had one day. I decided to write it down, and then years later, I find the marble notebook that it was in and decided to just kind of add on to it. And that's where that went.
Yeah, I understand. Part of the beginning of this for you was when you kept a notebook of dreams. Talk about that, because obviously keeping a notebook works for you. That's where you came up with hatched the concept for Radioactive Era of Change. Talk about that, keeping the book of dreams and how that's really been influential in who you are as a writer.
Yeah, it's, dreams, weird things happen. And I read somewhere that it was pretty good to help you with lucid dreaming. So anytime I could remember a dream, I would try to write it down. And then, years later, I just stumbled upon it after losing it during one of my moves and just went and added on to it.
Well, I'm glad you found that. The book is Radioactive Era of Change by Isaiah Lopez, filled with rave reviews, 5-star reviews. What was the inspiration to become a writer? Where did this come from, this wanting to tell a story, and not just any story? You've got so many compelling elements of this book, Radioactive Era of Change. Who influenced you or inspired you to become a writer?
Initially, there wasn't really any strict inspiration. It was kind of the lack of inspiration that made me to do I'll go and do it myself,
Yes.
You got Static Shock, TMNT, you got all these other cartoons, which were fantastic storylines, and the whole Black Lead and example and whatnot. And then with the Spider-Verse thing coming up, that also kind of adds on to the whole inspiration.
Yeah, if somebody were to say, describe what the book is like, where does this fall into a sci-fi category? It really doesn't. This is a unique story, isn't it? This is Isaiah's story. This is not taken from others. This has become strictly from your imagination. This is unique, isn't it?
Yeah, I try to be as unique with it as I could. I couldn't tell you if it matches anything. As far as I know, this is my work,
Well, it is your work, and it sticks out, and it's receiving rave reviews. The book is Radioactive Era of Change. Isaiah Lopez is our guest and the author. His website, authorisaachlopez.com. The book available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, the usual places. Find the link on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. I mentioned the main character here. One such man awakens from this incredible blast. He's got new power. He's also got a missing arm. How do you come up with him? How did you come up with him and the other characters you describe in the book Radioactive Era of Change?
Mostly it's like what's going on in the world, and then how does the guy endure it? It's like environment comes to me more before like the character does, and then sometimes the character comes before the environment. And a whole list of main characters, or MCs as it would be called, is kind of like listed off in my document somewhere that I just try to add on to the story for.
Well, it really moves the story along. The conversations are lively, revealing. They really establish the characters and what's going on. Talk about the conversations and that part of telling the story. Having the conversations move the story, but not get bogged down in too much conversation, because you don't do that.
No, it's not. None of it's really planned, I don't think. I'd say the main timeline, the plot of what goes or what happens, but like getting to be, I'm just watching the show and recording what I see.
That's interesting, because several of the reviews talk about this. It's almost cinematic. As you're reading it, it's coming alive. I take it that's the case for the author as well. This is playing out in your mind. You're just taking notes as you're watching the story.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing what goes into putting together a book like this, a book that is unique. It's receiving rave reviews, Radioactive Era of Change by Isaiah Lopez, our guest on the program. Who is the typical reader? I talk about this being, sci-fi oriented, but boy, as you read this would appeal to about anybody that really likes a good edge of your seat story. Who do you have in mind? Who's the target audience for this book?
I'm hoping to reach everybody, but realistically, the millennial age range, those who kind of grew up with the whole sci-fi and fantasy that I'm comfortable with and all that. And people of color certainly would find some representation in the field now, I'm hoping.
People in reading the reviews, they like your knowledge of science and technology. It's realistic. It moves the story along. Sometimes you read, oh, that could never happen. You read your book, Radioactive Era of Change, and you're thinking, yeah, that's plausible. What kind of research do you have to do as you're putting this story together to make it sci-fi oriented, but not totally out of the realm of possibility?
It mostly goes along the lines of, does this make sense, or can it make sense? And then I end up going under a rabbit hole of sorts when I get down into it.
And that's where you write this. And I don't want to give too much away in the beginning, but the beginning, boy, it's action-packed, right? Shock and awe. Like, if sometimes you read a book and you're 50 pages in and you wonder when it's actually going to start. You know when this starts. It's right at the beginning. Talk about writing the beginning, and without giving too much away, you really grab our attention and shake us around a little bit at the beginning, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for, because you got to catch them at the beginning, Books only, or the cover of the book can only do so much.
And you do that, mission accomplished in getting our attention. How important is it, as you're talking there about you sort of envision, it sounds like you almost have to get in the right mood to write the story, because you need to see it as well as be able to write it down on the computer. Do you have any rituals or routines that you go through to help you write, to get you in that state that you're able to be totally creative?
I would say music would be the biggest deal. Nothing with any real lyrics, and it's just like a beat, kind of get the momentum going for the story to go on.
And then you get in the zone. And okay, let's take that. Once you get into the zone, how do you balance writing with other aspects of your life? Is it difficult sometimes to get out of the zone and to stop thinking about this world you've created for these people?
Yeah, realistically, there is no balance. It's at work. I'm either just kind of going brain dead doing the work thing while my mind's just racing with whatever story, plot idea, or some new idea that decides to show up for it. And I do everything I can to try to write it down somewhere, but I lose some stuff.
I was just going to say, Do you have a notepad there so you could write that down, or a tape recorder so you could record all of that and finally get to it? So you watch the clock, you've got this ideas, you can't wait to get back to continue telling the story. In this book, Radioactive Era of Change, were there any challenges that you faced in writing this book? Any point when you're like, okay, I'm really not sure where to take the story at this point? Any challenges?
I would say, yeah. Biggest challenge I think I had was, well, not necessarily pushing the plot, but I would say wanting myself to, I guess, be brave enough to allow others to enjoy the story as well. And sometimes just like, I should probably just quit. And then other times it's like, no, at least do it for yourself. And then let the others kind of come in as they come.
You know, that's interesting because if you please yourself, you're going to please others. I mean, that's proven in the story that you've told here and all of your years of creativity, that if you unleash that, we want to come along for the ride. We want to be part of this world that you've created. What is the most rewarding aspect of being a writer? Not necessarily just for this book, but being a writer in general, where you can take these ideas and bring them to life and share them with other people. How does that feel? How enjoyable is that?
Oh, weird little God complex going on, but it's like, this is something I created, and I take pride and joy in the hardships and effort that it took to get it on, well, technically pen and paper, and just kind of breathe life into what it is.
The book is Radioactive Era of Change by Isaiah Lopez. His website is author.isaiahlopez.com. Book available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all of the usual places. And, of course, all this information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Part of your mission is to keep these books coming, to give us new and even more exciting stories in the future. What upcoming books or projects are you excited about working on now that you can share with us?
Well, definitely the sequel to Radioactive, along with, I'm going to say, 2 or 3 other stories that are kind of in the making now and drafting. One of them was Final Fantasy. Is like a high fantasy, I think it's called. And then another would be more of a sci-fi, like an industrial war type deal going on.
Well, and you can follow all of this by going to author.isaiahlopez.com. Get information, order Radioactive Era of Change there, and find out what Isaiah is working on, what will be coming out next. How long does it take you normally to write a book, from the concept to the time you're ready to have it published? And we'll use Radioactive Era of Change as maybe an example there. How long did it take you to get this book written to the point where you were satisfied with it?
Off and on, I think it went along 7-8 years. Because then I had work, and then I had school doing all that, and then losing the document somewhere. And then finding it again, and it just took 7-8 years.
Well, hopefully we won't have to wait 7 or 8 years for the sequel to Radioactive Era of Change. I know one of the things you said was you were motivated by a lack of motivation around you. You are, and you mentioned this in the beginning, motivated. You kick yourself in the tail to keep going and to keep telling stories out there. How important is that for somebody who's maybe just starting out like you were, and to get that motivation to finish?
I would say put yourself as the character to represent who you're trying to be. You have Superman, Batman, the list can go on, Flash, and pretty much everybody on the Avengers. And then, people of color, people like myself. All I have would be Black Panther off the top of my head, of course. Black Panther, Static Shock. Ooh. And then the most recent, Miles Morales.
Okay, all of those good for people who are starting off and just do it, I guess is what we're saying here. That's what Isaiah did, and the result is a book that's just completely loaded with 5-star reviews, Radioactive Era of Change. Twists and turns in the book as well. Do you have this sort of plotted out, or you just, again, follow where the story is taking you as you get in the zone to write?
I'd say partially. It's like I have the trail from A to Z, but all the letters in between just kind of happen as they do.
And they fit together so nicely. And the ending, everybody is raving about it as well. Did you know how it was going to end, or was this just, again, a point where, okay, the story is, I can wrap it up here. I feel good about where we are in the story.
Ooh, I just put on a song and just kind of let the thing go on, and that's pretty much how I decided it ended.
Well, that's interesting how everybody sort of develops their own writing style. I love what you're doing, and it's working out so well with Radioactive Era of Change. That's the book that's out now by Isaiah Lopez. His website is authorisaachlopez.com. You also mentioned getting started, encouragement projects you had in grade school. How important was that foundation for you in school and being encouraged creatively?
It was very interesting. Well, thinking back at it, it was, it's like, teachers are having me do this and that. But now it's like thinking back on it as I am an adult now, it's just like, that was a very interesting experience to have.
Yes. It's interesting. Sometimes we overlook that creative part of school and growing up. We do the memorization and the history and the mathematics and all of that. But here's something that has shaped who you are for the rest of your life, that creative side of Isaiah Lopez, the author of Radioactive Era of Change. Who influences you? Are there writers out there that you can't wait to get a copy of their new book?
Big one right now would be Aileron Kong and his The Land series. That's a pretty good one that I can't wait to finish.
Yes.
But I think I'm not really sure what's going on, but it has been a while since he's made his next book.
What do you hope what is the takeaway you want the reader to have after reading Radioactive Era of Change? I mentioned shocking, entertaining, mesmerizing. What do you hope, besides entertainment, we think a little bit about what this world is like, and is this possible, and how would we react in this situation? What do you hope the takeaway is from the reader after they read the book?
I want to pique curiosity. I want them to find a situation, a verse, a word even, and I guess take a moment from the book to just kind of go on the internet and look it up. And then I guess find their own little rabbit hole and discover all sorts of things going on in the world around them. Because a lot of times I feel like the public media, social media, and all that just kind of clouds the news and what everybody needs to be kind of keeping up with.
Yes, so much is superficial, and you go beyond that in giving us so much. And I want to just, a minute or so left here, I want to go back and talk about the science aspect and see what kind of background you had. You deal in aerodynamics, quantum physics, chemistry. You emphasize the current scientific details, research, while keeping the story entertaining and moving along. Do you have a background in science? Is that something that's always interested you?
It has been an interesting field as like a entertaining science fantasy type thing, but the most experience I have is high school, some college, and then aviation maintenance.
And put that with a vivid imagination, and you've got what a book here. Radioactive Era of Change by Isaiah Lopez, a masterful storyteller and world builder. You're going to really enjoy this book. And once you start reading, buckle up, because it's going to be an enjoyable ride, and you're not going to want to you're not going to put the book down until you finish. Isaiah Lopez. The book is, as I mentioned, Radioactive Era of Change. It's available on his website, author IsaiahLopez.com, Amazon, the usual places. Isaiah Lopez has been our guest on the program. Isaiah, congratulations on this book. Job well done. Looking forward to more conversations talking about upcoming books and the sequel. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It has been our pleasure. Our guest, Isaiah Lopez. His website is author IsaiahLopez.com. All this information, of course, on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And we're back on today's program right after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, associate producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, segment producer. Ben Watson, webmaster. Otto Bechet, director of engineering and TV production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, executive producer of This Week in America.